Seriously, this is what you cooked for my promotion? Brian's harsh words sliced through the air, shattering the joyful mood that had filled our dining room moments earlier. I stared at him in disbelief, my heart sinking as his eyes narrowed with disgust at the meal I had spent hours preparing, his favorite, creamy mushroom risotto. The kids froze, their forks halfway to their mouths, sensing the sudden shift in their father's demeanor. "Brian, what's wrong?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. "I thought you loved this dish." He scoffed, pushing his plate away. "Loved it? This tastes like cardboard. How hard is it to follow a simple recipe?" Jake's lip began to quiver, and Zoe's eyes welled up with tears. I reached across the table, placing a reassuring hand on each of their arms. "Daddy's just joking around," I lied, forcing a smile. "Why don't we all take a break and come back to our food when it's cooled down a bit?" Brian shot me a contemptuous glare, but I refused to meet his gaze, focusing instead on comforting our children. As they scampered off to play, I turned to my husband, my heart pounding. "What's gotten into you?" I hissed, keeping my voice low. "You're scaring the kids." He leaned back in his chair, a smug grin spreading across his face. "I'm just being honest, Ellie. If you can't handle the truth, that's your problem." I opened my mouth to protest, but the words died on my lips. This wasn't the caring, supportive man I had married. The one who had celebrated every minor accomplishment in our lives, who had doted on our children and made them feel like the center of the universe. As I watched him rise from the table and stride out of the room, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted irrevocably within our family. And for the first time, I found myself questioning the man I thought I knew better than anyone else in the world. Over the next few days, Brian's behavior only grew more erratic and disturbing. The man I had once admired for his gentle strength and unwavering devotion to our family had been replaced by a sneering, cold-hearted stranger. "Listen up, you little brats," he barked at Jake and Zoe one morning as they dawdled over their breakfast. "When I tell you to do something, you do it. No questions asked, understand?" The kids nodded meekly, their eyes wide with fear. I stepped in, my heart racing. "Brian, that's enough," I said firmly. "They're just children. There's no need to speak to them that way." He turned his icy glare on me. "And you," he spat, "don't think I haven't noticed the way you've been coddling them, undermining my authority. It stops now." I recoiled, stunned by the venom in his voice. Before I could respond, he stormed out of the house, leaving us all shell-shocked in his wake. That evening, after putting the kids to bed, I called my Uncle Tom, desperate for advice. "He's like a different person," I sobbed into the phone. "I don't know what's happening to him, but it's scaring me, Tom, and the kids are terrified." Uncle Tom's voice was gentle but firm. "You need to get out of there, Ellie. At least for a little while, until we can figure out what's going on with Brian. Stay with your parents, or come to my place. Just get yourself and the kids to safety." I shook my head, even though he couldn't see me. "I can't just leave," I protested. "He's my husband, the father of my children. I have to try to help him, to get through to him." "Ellie?" Uncle Tom sighed heavily. "Sometimes the people we love the most are the ones who can hurt us the deepest. Promise me you'll at least consider getting out for a while, okay? For the kids' sake, if nothing else." I promised, but deep down I knew I wouldn't leave. Not yet. I had to believe that the man I loved was still in there somewhere, buried beneath this new, twisted persona. And I was determined to find him, no matter what it took. I knew I had to get to the bottom of Brian's disturbing transformation, no matter how painful the truth might be. Late one night, after he had stormed off to bed, I crept downstairs, my heart pounding in my chest. From the living room, I could hear the faint murmur of his voice, punctuated by occasional bursts of hushed laughter. Straining to listen, I made out the words "Megan" and "can't wait to see you again." A wave of nausea washed over me as the realization hit. My husband was having an affair. I pressed my ear closer to the door, tears stinging my eyes as Brian's sickly sweet endearments floated out to me. "You're the only one who understands me, Megan, the only one who makes me feel alive." White-hot anger surged through me, momentarily overshadowing the hurt and betrayal. How dare he? How dare he throw away everything we'd built together, our family, our vows, for some cheap fling? I burst through the door, my hands balled into fists at my sides. "So that's it, then?" I spat, my voice shaking with rage. You're just going to toss me and the kids aside for some young thing at work? Brian whirled around, his face flushing crimson as he scrambled to end the call. Ellie, it's not what you think. Don't lie to me, I screamed, all pretense of composure abandoned. I heard everything, you miserable bastard. How could you do this to us? He narrowed his eyes, his lips curling into a sneer. Don't act so innocent, Ellie. You've been smothering me for years, treating me like a child instead of a man. Megan understands me, respects me. She's not some nagging shrew like you. The words stung like a physical blow, but I refused to back down. You're a coward, Brian. A selfish, spineless coward. And if you think for 1 second that I'm going to stand by and let you destroy this family, you're sadly mistaken. He laughed then, a harsh, grating sound that chilled me to the bone. Oh, really? And what are you going to do about it, huh? Leave me? Go ahead, be my guest. But just remember, without me, you and those brats are nothing. In that moment, as I stared into the cold, dead eyes of the man I had once loved more than life itself, I knew our marriage was over. The only question was, how far was I willing to go to protect my children from the monster their father had become? After my confrontation with Brian, I knew I had to get out. But where could I go? With no job and no savings of my own, I was completely dependent on him financially. That's when I remembered my parents' offer to let me stay with them if things ever got bad. At the time, I had brushed it off, certain that Brian and I were solid. But now, I dialed their number with trembling fingers, praying they would answer. Mom picked up on the third ring. Ellie? Sweetheart, what's wrong? Her voice was laced with concern. I took a deep, shuddering breath. Mom, I need your help. Brian, The words stuck in my throat as a fresh wave of tears spilled down my cheeks. Say no more, she said firmly. Your father and I will be there first thing in the morning to get you and the kids out of there. You just focus on packing a bag, okay? Relief washed over me, closely followed by a pang of guilt. But, Mom, I can't just show up on your doorstep with no warning. What about... Don't you dare finish that sentence, Ellie Scott. She cut me off. You are my daughter, and those babies are my grandchildren. There is nothing in this world more important than keeping you all safe. Do you understand me? I nodded weakly, fresh tears blurring my vision. Thank you, I whispered. I don't know what I'd do without you guys. The next morning, as promised, my parents arrived just after sunrise. Brian had already left for work, thank God. I didn't think I could face him again, not after last night. Dad pulled me into a fierce hug as soon as I opened the door. It's going to be okay, sweetie, he murmured, stroking my hair. We're going to get through this, I promise. With their help, we packed up what little we could and left that house behind, at least for the time being. As we drove away, the kids clutching their favorite stuffed animals in the back seat, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of sadness for the life I thought we'd had. But that life, I realized, had been a lie, and it was time to start over, no matter how hard it might be. My first call once we were settled at my parents' place was to my Aunt Linda, who worked as a realtor. If I was going to build a new life for me and my kids, I needed my own place. Don't you worry about a thing, honey, she assured me when I explained the situation. I'll find you the perfect little nest egg, you'll see. Just focus on those babies for now. True to her word, within a week, Linda had lined up a cozy 2-bedroom apartment in a good school district. It wasn't much, but it was ours, a safe haven, free from Brian's toxic influence. As I signed the lease, finally feeling like I could breathe again, I made a silent vow. From now on, protecting my children would be my top priority. No matter what it took, I would make sure they never had to experience the fear and pain their father had inflicted on our family. If exposing Brian's true nature to the world was the only way to keep them safe, then so be it. The gloves were off. The move into our new apartment was bittersweet. On one hand, I was relieved to finally have a safe space for me and the kids, away from Brian's toxic presence. But it also meant accepting that my marriage was truly over, and that hurt in a way I could never have prepared for. As the movers unloaded the last of our meager belongings, I surveyed the empty living room with a heavy heart. So many dreams, so many hopes for our future, all gone up in smoke because of one man's selfish actions. Mommy? Jake's small voice broke through my reverie. Is Daddy coming to live with us here too? I knelt down and pulled him into a tight embrace, fighting back tears. No, baby. Daddy, he's going to stay at our old house for a little while. Zoe toddled over, her brow furrowed in confusion. But why? Doesn't Daddy love us anymore? Of course he does, sweetie. I lied through my teeth. At this point, I wasn't even sure Brian was capable of love. Sometimes, grown-ups just need a little break from each other, that's all. The kids seemed to accept my explanation for now, but I knew that as they grew older, more questions would inevitably come, and I dreaded the day when I'd have to tell them the full, ugly truth about their father. In the days that followed, I threw myself into making our new place a home, determined to create a safe haven for my little family. But I also knew I couldn't hide from Brian forever. Sooner or later, we'd have to face each other again. That day came about a week after we moved in. I was unloading groceries when I heard a familiar laugh drifting through the parking lot. I froze, my heart pounding, as two figures rounded the corner. Brian, with his arm slung casually around the waist of a young, pretty blonde. Megan, the woman he'd betrayed me for. Before I could turn and leave, she spotted me, her eyes going wide with surprise, and was that fear? Brian, oblivious, merely grinned wolfishly. Well, if it isn't my darling wife, he sneered. Quite the little love nest you've made for yourself here, Ellie. I opened my mouth to respond, but Megan beat me to it. Please, Brian, don't start anything, she pleaded, her voice trembling. We were just heading out. He shrugged her off roughly. Don't be rude, Megan. Can't you see Ellie and I have some catching up to do? The smug look on his face made me want to vomit. But then I noticed the way Megan flinched at his harsh tone, and a tiny spark of realization flickered to life. Maybe, just maybe, she wasn't the villain in this story after all. Actually, Brian, I think Megan's right, I said coolly. You two run along and have fun. I've got better things to do with my time than trade insults with a lying snake like you. His eyes narrowed dangerously, but I held my ground. With a disdainful snort, he turned on his heel and stormed off, leaving Megan standing there looking utterly lost. On impulse, I reached out and touched her arm gently. Are you okay? She startled, then gave a small, sad shake of her head. No, I'm really not. In that moment, I made a decision, one that would change both our lives forever. Why don't you come inside? I offered. I think you and I need to have a little talk. Over the next few weeks, Megan and I formed an unlikely alliance, bound together by our shared experience of Brian's cruelty. As she opened up about the harassment and manipulation she'd endured at his hands, both at work and in their twisted relationship, a plan began to take shape in my mind. It was time to expose Brian for the monster he truly was, not just to me and Megan, but to the entire world. Are you sure about this, Ellie? Megan asked one afternoon as we pored over the evidence I'd painstakingly collected. Photos, emails, even a secret recording of one of Brian's vile, threatening phone calls. If we go through with this, there's no going back. I squared my jaw, my hands trembling only slightly as I looked her in the eye. I'm sure. He needs to be stopped, Megan. For your sake. For mine. For the kids. Who knows how many other lives he's destroyed with his lies and his abuse? She nodded slowly, her expression hardening with resolve. Okay, then. Let's do this. The next morning, I marched into the supermarket where Brian worked, the weight of the manila envelope in my hands grounding me like an anchor. I asked to speak with the store manager, my heart pounding in my chest. Brian's smug face fell the second he saw me stride through the door, Megan at my side. You, he growled, rising from his seat. What the hell is going on here? That's what I'd like to know, Mr. Jeffries, the manager interjected coolly. He fixed Brian with a steely glare. These ladies have brought some disturbing allegations to my attention. Care to explain yourself? For a moment, Brian looked almost comically flustered, his mouth working soundlessly. Then the mask slipped back into place, that cold, dead-eyed sneer I knew all too well. I don't know what lies these two psychos have been feeding you, he spat. But I can promise you, it's all a bunch of crazy, vindictive nonsense. This one, he jabbed a finger at me, has had it out for me ever since I left her pathetic ass. White-hot rage licked at my insides, but I forced myself to remain calm, turning to the manager with an eerie sense of tranquility. With all due respect, sir, I think the evidence speaks for itself. I handed him the file, watching impassively as he flipped through the contents, the photos of Megan's bruises, The recordings of Brian's threatening calls, the statements from other employees corroborating his pattern of intimidation and harassment. The manager's face drained of color as he digested it all. When he finally looked up at Brian again, there was a new hardness in his eyes and more than a hint of disgust. "Get out," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Get out of my store and don't even think about coming back. We'll be launching a full investigation into incidents, but I can promise you, your career here is over." For once, Brian seemed to have no snide comeback, no smarmy deflection. He simply stared at me, anger and hatred burning in his eyes. In that moment, I knew he saw me for what I truly was, not a meek, helpless victim, but a force to be reckoned with. Someone who would stop at nothing to protect herself and those she loved. As security escorted him from the building, I felt Megan's hand slip into mine, giving it a gentle, grateful squeeze. "Thank you," she whispered, her eyes shining with a mixture of relief and triumph. "You saved me, Ellie. You saved us both." And in that moment I knew that no matter what lay ahead, it would all be worth it. Because this time, finally, the price for Brian's cruelty was one he wouldn't just be able to walk away from. Brian's downfall was swift and brutal after our explosive confrontation at the supermarket. Within days, news of his suspension and the impending investigation had spread like wildfire, both among his former colleagues and throughout our small community. At first, he tried to downplay it all, putting on that same smarmy, arrogant front he'd perfected over the years. "It's all just a misunderstanding," he insisted whenever someone dared to ask about the rumors. "Those vengeful witches are trying to ruin me, but they don't have a shred of proof." Oh, how wrong he was. With Megan's brave testimony and the mountain of evidence we'd compiled, the investigation quickly uncovered a sordid pattern of abuse and harassment stretching back years. Employee after employee came forward, emboldened by our actions, to share their own horror stories about Brian's cruel, bullying behavior. Even some of his buddies from the loading dock, the same ones who used to laugh and high-five him in the break room, turned against him when confronted with the ugly truth. "I always knew Jeffries was a bit of an ass," one former friend confided to me with a shamefaced look. "But I never imagined he was capable of the stuff you exposed. It's like he was living this whole secret, twisted life none of us ever saw." As the evidence mounted, the supermarket chain had no choice but to terminate Brian's employment, effective immediately, ensuring he would never be hired by any of their stores again. But that was just the start of his very public humiliation. It turned out Megan's father was a senior executive at the company's national headquarters. When he learned the full extent of how his beloved only daughter had been mistreated and manipulated by her manager, he was apoplectic with rage. Megan begged him not to get involved, worried it would seem like she was using her family connections unfairly. But her father was having none of it. "That depraved monster took advantage of my little girl," he growled, his fists clenched tightly at his sides. "He's going to pay for what he did, Megan. I'll make damn sure of it." True to his word, within a matter of days, Brian's name and photo were circulated on an internal corporate watch list, complete with a stern warning about his history of abusive behavior. No matter where he applied, every potential employer would see that scarlet letter blazoned across his file. His once bright career prospects had been torched, going up in flames, alongside the shattered remains of his ego. Everywhere he went, Brian was met with scornful looks and whispers from those who now saw him for the manipulative, vindictive snake he truly was. At one point, he even tried slithering back to me, his tail tucked between his legs, begging for a second chance. "Ellie, please," he whimpered, his eyes wet with self-pitiers. "I'm a broken man. You've taken everything from me. My job, my reputation, my whole life. Can't you find it in your heart to forgive me? For the kid's sake?" I'll never forget the look of pure, unadulterated disgust that twisted my features as I stared him down, revulsion roiling in the pit of my stomach. "Forgive you?" I spat, my voice dripping with contempt. "After what you put me through? After how you terrorized and abused all those innocent people just to feed your massive ego?" I leaned in until our faces were just inches apart, holding his pathetic gaze hostage with my own. "Not a chance in hell, Brian. Now get out of my sight before I have you arrested for trespassing. You're nothing to me anymore. Nothing but a cautionary tale, a living embodiment of karma." As he slunk away, shoulders slumped in defeat, I felt a profound sense of catharsis wash over me. The demon that had nearly destroyed my family was finally exorcised, vanquished by the light of truth and justice. It was over. I'd won. And deep down, I knew my new life, our new life, was just beginning. With Brian finally out of our lives for good, an incredible weight lifted from my shoulders. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I could breathe freely again without the constant fear and anxiety that had plagued me during those dark days of his emotional abuse. Of course, life as a newly single mother came with its own unique set of challenges. There were days when the stress and exhaustion threatened to overwhelm me entirely. But thankfully, I had an amazing support system in the form of my parents, aunt and uncle to help pick up the slack. "You just focus on those babies, sweetie," Mom would insist whenever I tried to protest their generosity. "Let us old folks worry about the rest," and worry they did. From driving the kids to dance classes and soccer practice, to stocking my fridge with home-cooked meals, to simply being there to lend an ear whenever I needed to vent my frustrations. Their love and unwavering support was the balm that soothed my wounded soul. In time, a new sense of normalcy began to take root in our little household. The kids blossomed under the safety and stability of our fresh start, quickly putting the trauma of their father's actions behind them with the beautiful resilience that only children can possess. As for me, I found strength and purpose in throwing myself into my work at the consulting firm and being the best mother I could possibly be. Uncle Tom was thrilled to give me more responsibility, praising my ability to keep a cool head under pressure, a quality he joked must have been forged in the fires of my recent ordeal. "I always knew you were one tough cookie, Ellie girl," he'd say with a wink and that signature twinkle in his eye. "But after seeing you take down that low-life ex of yours, sheesh, I'm just glad I was never on your bad side." We'd share a laugh, but underneath the joviality was a profound sense of pride. In myself, in how far I'd come, in the life I was building from the ashes of my shattered dreams. The months rolled by, and soon it had been over a year since I'd last laid eyes on Brian's wretched face. I hoped he was suffering, wherever he'd slithered off to, that the consequences of his cruel, selfish actions weighed on him every single day. As for me and my little tribe, we were positively thriving. There was a lightness to our days now, an infectious joy that came from being truly, blissfully free from his toxic presence. My biggest worries were making sure the kids got to their activities on time and that I'd remembered to stock up on their favorite snacks. Simple, wonderful little things that I'd once taken for granted, before my life was turned upside down. Sitting on the couch one evening, watching Jake and Zoe playfully squabble over the TV remote, I felt an overwhelming surge of love and gratitude wash over me. These two incredible little humans, their bright smiles and raucous laughter filling our cozy living room, was my reason for enduring the darkness, for pressing on even when it felt impossible, for standing my ground and refusing to let a vile, manipulative bully rob me of the life I deserved. As my gaze drifted over the framed photos lining the walls, candid snapshots of birthday parties and family vacations, reminders of the joy that had once dominated our household, a serene sense of peace settled over me. Brian was a ghost, a distant and increasingly faded memory from a past life. This right here and now was my present, my future. And as long as I had these two amazing kids by my side, come what may, I knew we would be just fine.
"I will make you and your daughter happy."
Believing those words, I remarried with a younger husband. However, he didn't keep his promises and didn't treat me and my daughter well. One day, my daughter was rushed to the emergency room after an accident. I hurriedly contacted my husband. "Come to the hospital quickly." I pleaded desperately, but my husband refused.
"It's the middle of my mom's birthday party. I don't care about someone else's kid."
With those words, my husband hung up the phone, but this incident changed his fate. The next day, he lost everything. My name is Abigail Martin, and I'm 35 years old. I'm a hard-working office worker. My family consists of my husband, Cameron, who is 5 years younger, and my 7-year-old daughter, Amy. I have been married to Cameron for almost 2 years now. Some might have noticed the discrepancy between the years of marriage and my daughter's age. Actually, Cameron and I remarried. There is no blood relation between Amy and Cameron. Amy was a child from my previous husband. My ex-husband was a kind person who cherished both me and Amy dearly. However, he suddenly passed away in a traffic accident. After my ex-husband's death, I couldn't recover from the shock for a while. If Amy hadn't been there, I might have impulsively followed after my ex-husband. My parents and my older brother's family supported me while I was feeling overwhelmed. Finally, when I had managed to pull myself together, I met someone through work-related connections, and he confessed his feelings to me.
Abigail, I really like you. Please, consider dating me with marriage in mind.
I was quite surprised by his confession. Cameron is a bright and sociable person who can talk freely without hesitation. I liked him too, but I never thought he would confess to me. At first, I rejected his confession. However, Cameron, who has a somewhat unreliable aspect, tickles my maternal instincts and makes me feel like I can't leave him alone. However, he's 5 years younger than me, and I have a daughter, so he wasn't a romantic prospect. But Cameron didn't give up.
I'm the type who gets along well with kids. I'm confident that I will be a good father to Amy. I will definitely make you and Amy happy.
Cameron's desperate demeanor made my heart waver. I had been worried for some time that Amy might need a new father, so as an experiment I introduced Cameron to my then 5-year-old daughter. And Cameron happily played tag and gave piggyback rides, which delighted her immensely. Amy also quickly became fond of Cameron. Maybe this person can heal the loneliness of losing my husband. With that thought in mind, I decided to remarry Cameron. However, there were also concerns. It was about the relationship between Cameron and his mother. He apparently lost his father at a young age and was raised by a single mother. That's why he comforted Amy, who felt down about losing her father, by saying,
I understand how you feel.
Previously, Cameron had awkwardly expressed this to me.
I'm truly grateful to my mom who raised me single-handedly. I feel like I have to cherish her.
If you only hear that much, you'd probably consider it a heartwarming tale of filial devotion. However, I felt uneasy about those words. After all, when Cameron is in front of his mother, he behaves like a spoiled child. He sticks to her side, always smiling. His mother also dotes on him. On the other hand, he is quite cold towards me and Amy. It seems that my mother-in-law is dissatisfied with the fact that I am older and that Amy is a stepchild. I overheard my mother-in-law murmuring during the pre-wedding introductions. Cameron could have found a better partner. And it made me feel disheartened. I was concerned about my mother-in-law, but it's not like I'm living with her or anything. I thought Cameron would prioritize our family after we got married. That's what I believed. However, my expectations were completely betrayed. After marriage, Cameron revealed his lazy nature. Despite both of us working, he didn't lift a finger and left everything to me. While he would help if I asked, he'd grumble things like,
I'm tired.
Or,
Isn't housework the wife's duty?
Even though Amy is still young, she voluntarily helps with household chores. Moreover, he hardly spends time with Amy after our marriage. He just stays at home playing games on weekends. Or worse, he watches boat racing on his computer and gambles while doing so. Even when Amy asks him to play, he responds coldly with,
I'm busy right now.
Or,
Go play with Mom.
Amy, who used to be fond of Cameron, gradually began to distance herself from him. Furthermore, he has a habit of reckless spending and can't manage his money wisely. He quickly spends his salary on things like gaming, gambling, or drinking out. The money left for household expenses is minimal. On the other hand, I've been diligently saving money for my daughter's future. Since Cameron isn't reliable, I'm the only one who can leave money for my daughter. Additionally, Cameron is extremely picky about food, like a child. He refuses to eat any vegetables, only consuming fish and meat. Even if I finally chop vegetables and incorporate them into dishes, he simply pushes them away. With Amy going through her growth spurt and considering the family's nutrition, I can't just serve Cameron's favorite meat all the time. When we argue about this, Cameron immediately storms off to his parents' house. It's unbelievable that he still sulks over such trivial matters like a child. I was utterly astounded by his immature behavior. One day, a few hours after Cameron headed to his parents' house, I received a call from my mother-in-law. Instead of standing up for me, she ended up defending Cameron.
It seems that Cameron values me, his mother, more than his wife. He even prefers my cooking. For someone like Cameron, who is in his prime working years, meat and fish are more important than vegetables. I don't eat vegetables either. Even though you're a wife, you can't even manage such basic considerations.
Cameron's picky eating habits seem to stem from his mother. Maybe his mother, out of her love for her son, has always allowed Cameron to eat whatever he wants. There's a limit to being an overindulgent parent. Since our marriage, I had been fed up with Cameron doing whatever he pleased. The idea of divorce crossed my mind, but considering remarriage, I found it difficult to take that step. Looking back now, I should have kicked him out right away, but as time passed, something terrible happened when Amy turned 7. Amy loves music, so I have her attend a nearby piano class. It seems like she has a lot of friends and always seemed to be having fun. That day, because I had errands the day before and was quite busy, it seemed like we might be late for piano class. I had been tasked with urgent work by my boss, so I was frantically working at home. I usually walk to the class, but that wouldn't be fast enough. I don't have a car, but Cameron does. However, he refuses to let me drive his car, citing,
"I'd be in trouble if the car got damaged."
So I asked Cameron to drive our daughter to the class. However, he refused my request with a reluctant expression.
"No, I don't wanna. It's a hassle. What's in it for me to take Amy to her piano class? Just because you don't go to one class doesn't mean they're going to make you quit right away. Just come up with some excuse and let her take a break."
That's not it. It's not just about giving her a ride in the car. If it's too much trouble, then please let me borrow the car. I'll return it right away.
There's no way I'm lending it. I'd be in trouble if my car, bought with my money, gets damaged. Besides, today's my mom's birthday. I'm busy because I'm going to join her now.
In that case, wouldn't it be fine to take Amy to her piano class in the car first? There's no time limit for celebrating your mother's birthday.
I want to go to my parents' house quickly and be the first to celebrate my mom's birthday. I didn't buy that car to chauffeur someone else's kid.
The way he referred to Amy as someone else's kid really got to me. Even though he married me, saying he would become Amy's father when it's inconvenient for him, he treats Amy like a stranger. Cameron and I had been going back and forth for a while. Amy, noticing the tension escalating between us, seemed to sense the impending argument and intervened to stop us from turning it into a full-blown marital dispute.
Mom, it's okay. I'll run there, so please, don't fight with Dad.
Seeing Amy's troubled expression, I was taken aback. We shouldn't argue in front of the children. I felt bad for her upbringing, and most of all, I felt sorry for Amy's concern for us. Cameron just snorted and quickly left, saying,
"Well, if she's saying that, it should be fine."
He really is an aggravating man. I hesitated about whether it was okay to let Amy go alone, but the road she always walks on has very little traffic. I understand. Have a safe trip. With that, I sent Amy on her way. Somewhere deep inside, I had a bad feeling, and unfortunately, that feeling came true. About 20 minutes later, just when my work had reached a stopping point, I received a call from the police. I hurriedly answered the phone, only to hear that there had been a traffic accident. Rushing to the scene, I arrived just as my daughter was being loaded into the ambulance. Checking on Amy, I found her pale-faced and barely conscious. "Amy, stay strong. Don't leave Mama behind. Don't leave." I held my daughter's hand and desperately called out to her, but there was no response from her. My ex-husband had also been in a car accident. Now, my daughter too. It's like a nightmare. I got into the ambulance and headed to the nearby hospital with the paramedics. I tried contacting Cameron, but there was no reply. Unable to wait, I called my parents and my brother and his wife, and they all rushed to the hospital immediately. According to the doctor, my daughter had hit her head and was unconscious, and the situation was critical. The image of my late ex-husband who died in a car accident flashed through my mind. I felt like I was going to collapse right then and there if my brother hadn't supported me. Finally, I managed to get through to Cameron on the phone.
Hey, what do you think you're doing? You keep calling over and over again, it's annoying.
My husband yelled at me for that, but I didn't have time to care about it. Please, hurry and come to the hospital. Amy was in a car accident. We're at a hospital near our house. I pleaded desperately with Cameron, but what came out of his mouth were unbelievably cruel words.
Huh? Are you calling me for such a stupid reason? Don't mess with me.
What's with that attitude? Amy is in a dangerous situation right now.
So what? I'm in the middle of my mom's birthday party right now. I'm about to give her presents. I don't care about other people's kids. Figure it out on your own over there.
Without waiting for my response, Cameron hung up the phone. My husband's abusive language left me dumbfounded. I always thought he was a jerk, but to completely dismiss Amy's life as unimportant? That guy. I'll never forgive him. I'll show him hell. As I burned with anger like this, my brother grabbed my shoulder tightly. Suddenly I noticed that both my brother and my parents were in a furious frenzy. It's the first time I've seen them like this.
Abigail, does he always treat you like this?
Upon hearing my brother's words, I widened my eyes. Apparently I was in a hurry and had the phone on speaker. My husband's merciless words were heard by everyone present. My parents trembled with anger. At this point, there's no more hiding. I confessed the truth to my parents and my brother's family. They were furious, insisting,
"You should divorce."
Of course, that's my intention as well. How can someone utter such cruel words when Amy is in such a terrible situation? Fortunately, thanks to intensive treatment, Amy's life was saved. Her condition stabilized, and a few hours later, she was able to speak. Managing to keep Amy safe, I felt relieved. My parents and my brother's family also breathed a sigh of relief. The next day, Cameron seemed to be in high spirits, even humming a tune. But then Cameron's smile froze. Understandably, considering my parents and my brother's family were all gathered at our house. My sister-in-law was taking care of Amy at the hospital. Amidst the tense atmosphere, I took the lead and spoke up. Welcome back. Did you enjoy your mom's birthday party?
Huh? Oh, well, it was okay, I guess.
Even Cameron, who usually holds himself confidently, seemed to lack courage in this situation. His gaze wandered around uncomfortably. Ignoring his demeanor, I brought up the matter directly. We're getting a divorce. Sign these divorce papers quickly. Let's leave the details like asset distribution to the lawyers, okay? Cameron looked pale at my words. My brother, with a stern look, continued speaking.
Cameron, I'm deeply disappointed in you. I trusted you to take care of my little sister. Looks like you're quite neglectful towards Abigail and Amy.
Cameron's expression darkened further at my brother's remark. Actually, my brother is Cameron's boss at the company he works for. While my brother had shown favoritism towards Cameron because he's my husband, that's no longer an option. If my brother were to abandon him, Cameron's future career prospects would be bleak. Moreover, the house we live in belongs to my parents. My parents gave it to me as a gift to celebrate my remarriage. Aside from my daughter Amy and myself, Cameron, being an outsider regarding the residence, has no rights. If we were to divorce, he'd have to leave the house. Realizing he was in a bad situation, Cameron broke out in a cool sweat and started trembling. Suddenly, he knelt down and begged for my forgiveness.
Abigail, I'm sorry. I was taking advantage of your kindness. I don't want a divorce. From now on, I'll change my ways and cherish you and Amy, so please spare me from divorce.
Watching him desperately plead like that doesn't affect me at all. Rather, I just contemptuously wish he wouldn't make such a spectacle of himself. I've been trying my best to maintain a good relationship with him all this time, but he's been behaving however he likes without caring about that. He didn't even treat Amy well. And on top of everything, despite knowing about Amy's accident, he prioritized his mother's birthday party. Even I, as patient as I am, have reached my limit. I will never forgive Cameron for trying to abandon my daughter when her life was in danger, even though she's his stepdaughter. His mother, who allowed such behavior, is equally guilty, so I said this to him. What value does your kneeling have? You have neglected me, and Amy, done as you pleased. You lied when you said you would take care of us before we got married. I can't trust you even if you apologize now.
Please don't say that. I'm really sorry for what I did.
All you're worried about is your own position, isn't it? Anyway, I can't continue being your spouse anymore. We don't need a father who doesn't care about his own daughter who just had an accident. Never again involve yourself again with me and Amy. With that, Cameron burst into tears, begging for forgiveness. My brother, parents, and I watched him with cold eyes. After that, Cameron and I divorced. Since there was no infidelity, I didn't seek alimony. After the divorce, of course, I kicked Cameron out of the house. Word of the divorce spread at work, and Cameron was rumored to be a mama's boy, and looked at with suspicion by everyone. Unable to endure such a situation, Cameron finally resigned. He returned to his parents' house, but his unhealthy habits caught up with him, and he and his mother fell ill. They're managing to get by on his mother's savings, but apparently it's almost depleted. He's also working multiple part-time jobs, but due to his illness, they don't last long. Cameron, feeling anxious about the future, begged me for reconciliation, but I firmly rejected it. Amy and I are now living a calmer life, thanks to the strong encouragement from my parents and my brother and sister-in-law. Amy, who has been discharged from the hospital, is also smiling more. I will continue to work hard to keep my daughter smiling. Thank you for watching until the end. Please like the video and subscribe to our channel. See you in the next video.
I just got a call from the nursing home, and they were reminding me to transfer them the money. What happened to the $2,000 that I give you every month?
My husband, Grant, questions me angrily. I was just getting confused and didn't know what was going on.
Hey, I'm asking you, what happened to the money?
I've been giving it to Lucy. When I managed to get these words out, my husband's eyes widened in disbelief.
Mom, where's the money for the nursing home for Dad?
My mother-in-law, Lucy, was extremely frightened as my husband shouted angrily. My name is Maya. I am 32 years old, and I am a housewife. It has been 3 years now since I got married to my husband, Grant. I met my husband at a singles party, and since we were in the same age, we hit it off right away. And since we both liked to drink, we immediately exchanged contact numbers and made plans to go out for drinks. We went out to different bars and pubs several times, and we got closer gradually. Then, Grant confessed his feelings for me, and we started to go out. And after 2 years of dating, we got married.
Once we get married, I want you to be at home, being a full-time housewife.
As Grant requested that, I quit my job and became a housewife. My husband works for a company that pays reasonably well, and we can make a good living together without me having to work. Besides, I wanted to experience being a full-time housewife at least once, so I agreed to his request. So, I made up my mind to be a good wife who supports her husband well.
This is really, really delicious. The chicken goes really well with the sauce, and the sauce tastes great. And the mashed potatoes with the chicken is the best. I'll definitely eat seconds.
Thank you. I cooked enough for us, so you can definitely have seconds. My husband always seems to enjoy the meals I make, and he compliments and thanks me for doing the house chores.
Thank you for ironing my shirts. I always get really motivated when I get to wear a nice ironed shirt.
I was really happy from the bottom of my heart that I had met a really nice man, thinking that it is rare to find a man who can say such kind words. On our days off, we spent quality time together traveling and driving around. Just being with my husband made me very happy. Time flew by so quickly, and 3 years have already passed since we got married. I have been so happy and stress-free in my marriage with my husband for these 3 years. I am sure it was the same for my husband as well. We don't have any kids yet, but I knew that our child would be a very nice, gentle, and adorable child. How would we raise our child if we had one? What lessons would we give them? What kind of dreams would they have? Just thinking about these things made me excited. One day, however, my husband came home from work with a very gloomy look on his face. "Oh, Grant, what's wrong, honey? Did something happen?" I was very worried because I had never seen my husband look like that before. To this, my husband said,
May I talk with you for a minute?
And sat down on the sofa with me. He took a deep breath and opened his mouth.
My dad is going into a nursing home.
What? My father-in-law, Jack, and his health has been deteriorating for several years and had been in and out of the hospital repeatedly. Just recently, half of his body became paralyzed due to the after effects of his illness, and he needed nursing care. Since Grant's parents live in the rural area, we can't really move into their house and live with them, nor can we bring them here all the way into the city. So, Grant has decided to put Jack in a nursing home because my mother-in-law, Lucy, also has a chronic back condition and cannot fully take care of Jack on her own. That would be cheaper than hiring a helper all day long. And after my husband finished explaining everything, he apologized and asked me for a favor.
I'm sorry, but Mom asked me to help her pay for Dad's nursing home. And I couldn't really refuse her. So that's why.
I knew immediately what my husband was trying to ask me. All right, I will also start working, okay?
Honey, thank you so much for understanding.
I didn't want to see my husband sad anymore. Besides, I have enjoyed and had enough time being a full-time housewife for these past 3 years. It's time for me to go out into the world and start working again. I then looked for an admin job as I had done that work before. And as luck would have it, I found a company that was willing to hire me with good working conditions, which I was looking for. The salary was about the same as the one I had before my marriage, and the working hours were just right, from 9 to 5. The company was also close from my house, which was pretty good. So like that, I started working again. It was refreshing to work at a company for the first time in a long time, and I enjoyed being able to communicate with different people again. Now, I am working hard and trying to quickly regain my working skills.
Maya, thank you so much. You're definitely helping out a lot.
Jack's nursing home costs $2,000 a month. Lucy wanted to put him into a proper nursing home, so she made a contract with a place which cost around that much. And my husband transferred the money every month to Lucy. Lucy would contact my husband and say, "Thank you so much for all your help. Your father is safe and sound at the nursing home." And hearing this, he and I were both relieved. But after a few months or so, I suddenly received a phone call from Lucy. "Hello, Lucy. What's wrong?" I was a little surprised, as I rarely received phone calls from Lucy directly. "Oh, Maya, thank you for always sending the money." No, How's Jack doing since then? He seemed fine when we visited him last time. Maybe it's because he's in the nursing home. He's doing really well. Oh, I'm really glad to hear that then. And, well, I called you today to ask for a favor, Maya. A favor? You see, Grant always transfers the money to me on weekdays after work, right? But the transfer fee costs a lot, doesn't it? Besides, from the bank which Grant uses, the fee for transferring money to my account is much higher than the others. I felt bad about that because even a small amount of money being transferred from Grant's account would end up costing quite a lot of money just for the transfer fee, if he kept on doing that, you know. Oh, well, that's true. A transfer from my husband to Lucy's bank account costs about $3 to $4 every time a transfer is made. If he keeps doing that every month, it would amount to quite a bit of money in a year, and after a few years, it would add up a lot. So, I was thinking, you seem to finish your work in the afternoon, so from now on, could you transfer the money to me instead of Grant? If I remember correctly, Maya, you can do the transfers for free since we're using the same bank, right? Yes, you're right, I understand. I'll make sure I transfer the money every month then. And, well, from here, I kind of want you to keep this a secret from Grant, but if possible, could you also add $500 a month along with a nursing home fee from your earnings? Oh? Why is that? Actually, my husband is in debt with about $10,000 and... What? Really? I'm paying it off bit by bit from my pension now, but if I keep on doing that, then I won't be able to make ends meet. I see. So that's why, Maya, please think of it as helping a poor old woman like me. All right, I understand. Doing it all alone by yourself would be too much for you, Lucy. Oh, thank you so much, Maya. You really are a very good wife. Lucy thanked me many times over the phone when I accepted her favor. I did feel that $500 of assistance per month was a bit difficult and would require a lot of work, but I thought it would be fine if Lucy was being so grateful like that. I explained to my husband that I was going to transfer the money to her instead of him, and explained about the transfer fees for now.
Oh, that's true. If the fees keep piling up, it'll be ridiculous. Thank you, Maya. I'll be counting on you then.
So, I transferred $2,500 to Lucy's bank account every month, in which $2,000 was for the nursing home fee, plus the additional $500 for helping out Lucy for the debt. My husband paid the $2,000 from his own salary, and I paid $500 from my own earnings. Then, about once a month, we visited Jack at the nursing home and Lucy's house to see how she was doing. Lucy seemed to be doing very well, probably because she didn't have to worry about money that much anymore. I will always be grateful to you both. Thank you so much for all your help with the nursing home expenses. Lucy nodded at us and made eye contact with me as she said that. I nodded back softly.
It's okay, Mom. You and Dad raised me and put me through college, so let me at least take care of you both like this.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy. We then returned home while I smiled at the exchange between Lucy and Grant. I thought that we would continue to support my parents-in-law like this as we went on with our lives. But then, something unexpected happened. It all happened one day, about 2 months after visiting Jack and Lucy. My husband received a phone call.
Yes, hello. Yes. Yes, that's me. Excuse me?
My husband's face became more and more grim as the call continued. Who on earth was calling? I got curious and looked at him all worried. He spent the next few minutes talking on the phone. When he hung up the phone, he glared at me. Oh, what's wrong, honey?
What is the meaning of this?
What is?
I just got a call from the nursing home and they were reminding me to transfer them the money.
What? They were reminding you about that? To my surprise, the phone call Grant just received was from the nursing home where Jack was staying at. They couldn't confirm the payment at all, and when they tried calling Lucy's number, they could not get through to her. So they called my husband, who had been Jack's emergency contact.
What happened to the $2,000 that I give you every month?
My husband, Grant, questions me angrily. I was just getting confused and didn't know what was going on.
Maya, you said that you would transfer the money every month, didn't you? So why hasn't the money been transferred to the nursing home? Hey, I'm asking you, what happened to the money?
Grant was getting really angry at me. I've been giving it to Lucy. When I managed to get these words out, my husband's eyes widened in disbelief.
If that's the case, then why would the nursing home call me about the unpaid fee?
I have no idea. Look here. I quickly showed him the history of my online banking transfer using the bank app on my smartphone. And it's confirmed by the bank that the money was properly transferred to Lucy's account.
So, it's true. Then it's because of Mom?
I didn't want to believe it, but I nodded in agreement with my husband. My husband's face turned pale and he looked very shocked.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Maya. I didn't mean to really doubt you.
No, it's fine. I didn't think Lucy would do such a thing either. And so, we went over to Lucy's place the next week without even telling her.
Huh? Hey, what's going on with you both coming over like this all of a sudden?
My husband was holding back all his emotions, but his anger and emotions got out all at once the moment he saw Lucy. He began to tremble with anger and angrily shouted at Lucy.
Mom, where's the money for the nursing home for Dad?
My mother-in-law Lucy was extremely frightened as my husband shouted angrily.
What is up with you screaming like that all of a sudden, honey? And why are you even asking me this?
I just got a call from the nursing home saying they couldn't reach you. It looks like you're behind the nursing home fee.
No way. I was told that Maya was the one transferring the money directly to the nursing home, so I left it to her, didn't I?
Excuse me?
Lucy just blatantly told a lie, which both Grant and I knew that it was a complete lie.
I'm sure of it. That's what Maya said on the phone.
Where's the proof to that then?
Well, it's not like I record phone calls, so I can't give you any proof, but I'm sure she said so. But I can't believe the nursing home fee hasn't been paid for because of that.
You're such a terrible person to steal money, Maya.
Lucy began to say so and blamed me for what she did. But I clearly had proof that I transferred the money to Lucy. So my husband knew that Lucy was lying.
Wow, I really didn't expect you to be that terrible, Mother.
Why? Why won't you even believe me?
Lucy, this is a little off topic, but were you planning to go out now?
What?
Well, yes, I was. I was going to have lunch with my friend.
I see. So that's why you're wearing luxury brand clothes, huh?
I beg your pardon? You said you were having trouble financially, so in addition to the nursing fee, I also transferred $500 from my own earnings to your bank account. But you were spending it like that? What are you even talking about?
Mom, there's no use in lying about it. Maybe you thought that if it was between online banks, you could fake that you didn't get the money from Maya since she didn't have a bank book. But if she used the app, she could easily confirm it, you know.
What?
So, I already know that Maya has been transferring you a total of $2,500 every month.
Oh no.
I can't forgive you for lying about my dad being in debt to Maya, and then deceiving her and living a luxurious life by using all the money we transferred to you. I'll have you pay back every penny you ever spent without our permission, Mother.
No way. I don't have any more money with me.
Don't play with me. My dad is about to be kicked out of the nursing home because of you and your selfishness. You should be really ashamed of yourself. How low could you even get?
My husband got so angry that Lucy was completely freaked out. We then immediately reported this incident to Jack. When Jack found out that Lucy had done such a thing, he was furious. He then divorced Lucy, deducted the unpaid nursing home fee from her share of the property, and then deducted the money we had been transferring her, in which, in the end, she used to spend for her own luxury. So, in the end, Lucy got much less money than she could have gotten from the divorce. She was also evicted from her house and is now working part-time and living alone in a shabby old apartment. I don't know what happened after that, since we also cut ties with Lucy, but I guess she will live a lonely, sad life for the rest of her life. We then asked Jack to come to where we live and move into a nursing home near our house. Now I can easily visit Jack after work or on weekends. I also just recently found out that I was pregnant. When Jack's grandchild is born, my husband and I will visit Jack with a baby to see him. And my husband and I will continue to take care of our family and live happily together. Lucy is indeed a lousy person, spending the money of the nursing home without permission. She probably didn't really love Jack either, huh? I feel a little sorry for Jack, who was married with such a person for so many years. But I am relieved that Maya and Grant found out about Lucy and her true nature in the end. I hope Maya lives happily with her husband, Jack, and the baby that she is about to have soon. Thank you for watching until the end. Please subscribe to our channel. We hope to see you in our next video.
The outcome of my mill being bedridden and using me as her servant for 10 years.
I'm Dawn, 50 years old. I live peacefully with my husband. Until a few years ago, our lives were stormy. My mother-in-law Karen, who lived alone, became bedridden about 10 years ago. She tripped and fell at the entrance of her home and fractured her pelvis. She underwent 2 surgeries and spent quite a long time in the hospital. She was reluctant to undergo rehabilitation even though the muscles in her lower body had deteriorated. The nurses and physiotherapists who were exasperated with her began to contact me every day. Even though my husband Jeremy and I tried to persuade her, she didn't get out of bed. You will understand if you are in my situation. Do you know how hard it is not to be able to move your body the way you want to? Karen was pessimistic about her inability and often took it out on those around her. It was not unusual to hear her yelling from her hospital room. I knew that nothing I could say would help. I asked Jeremy to speak to her patiently, but he quickly gave up on her stubbornness. If she doesn't want to do it, then don't do it. Karen and he were equally stubborn, so it was hard to get them to come to terms. Even though the doctor told her that she would become almost bedridden if she didn't move, she showed no sign of concern, as if she had given up. She even said that if that happened, she wanted to move in with us. Jeremy and she were actually not blood related. She was the second wife of his late father, and after he passed away, she lived with Jeremy. She was after her late husband's fortune when she married. However, things didn't go as well with him as she hoped for. I heard that she still held a grudge over the failed succession of inheritance. I married into such a family and lived separately from her. I wanted to avoid living with such a nervous and selfish mother-in-law, even if she needed nursing care. I patiently tried to convince her to go to rehabilitation, but nothing changed. When I made a final proposal to transfer her to a hospital with a rehabilitation ward, she finally agreed. It was an hour-and-a-half drive from our house. I thought that she would complain when I told her that I couldn't come to visit her as often as before, but surprisingly, she accepted easily. Her muscular strength had deteriorated considerably during the time she had complained. I felt weary when I was told by the physiotherapist that she needed to work patiently. After 3 months in the hospital, she was discharged. Even though she got out, she was not able to move as freely as used to. I talked with Jeremy about admitting her into an assisted living facility since it had been impossible for her to live alone. She adamantly refused and demanded to live with us. I don't want to go to a facility. Are you trying to abandon me? She told all her friends and relatives that we were trying to get rid of her. We were made to look like the bad guys. I feel sorry for her. You're the eldest son, so you should take good care of her. Jeremy received numerous calls from his uncles and aunts. In the end, he was forced to agree with Karen. It was such a calculated ploy by the mother, who knew so well that her son cared about his reputation. He tried to prepare the house as best as he could to keep her quiet from complaining all the time. He installed a ramp at the entrance, bought a high-performance nursing bed, and so on. He was confident that she wasn't going to say anything. Contrary to his thought, she had something outrageous in her mind. You're my daughter-in-law, so you're responsible for taking care of me. She demanded that I look after her 24/7. I had a job and was not in a position to obey her. If I wanted her to live without any inconvenience, I needed a professional helper. Besides, Jeremy's income was not enough to support all of us. I couldn't quit my job to maintain our lifestyle. Jeremy disclosed the situation to her, but she was adamant. I don't want to be cared for by a stranger. Why can't I ask her to fulfill her duty as a daughter-in-law? If we didn't listen to her, she threatened us by saying she was going to tell all the relatives that we were heartless people. As soon as he heard the word relatives, he shut up. Thus, I had to work, raise a child, and take care of her. To do so, I resigned from the company where I had worked for a long time, and instead, I took a part-time job at a nearby diner. My income dropped dramatically, and the time I spent with Karen increased. Hey, How long are you going to make me wait? Bring me my food now. When I was at home, she was very noisy. If I was even a little late in preparing the meal, she yelled at me so loudly that it echoed throughout the house. She was also very particular about how I served the food. Tea had to be scorching hot. There had to be a variety of food, including Italian, Mexican, and Asian dishes. A side of vegetables at every meal was a must. Meat and fish had to be domestic products. It was very annoying for me as she was only crippled and had a normal appetite. Perhaps because she had nothing else to look forward to, there was no compromise at all when it came to food. If the food was even slightly cold, she asked me to reheat it. If she didn't like the menu, she ordered me to cook something else. It was a lot of work just to prepare a meal on top of helping her with personal care. She could not bathe by herself, so I had to help her. She refused to wear a diaper, and every time she needed to go to the bathroom, no matter how busy I was summoned to take her to the bathroom. The room had to be aired several times a day and had to be cleaned every day. Bed sheets and pillowcases were also changed daily. It was an absolute no-no to throw her good clothes and bedding into a dryer. She dared to claim that she couldn't sleep on a sheet that was not exposed to the sun every day. When it rained non-stop and the laundry didn't dry, she whined endlessly. How was I supposed to control the weather? I almost went off at her so many times. The biggest hassle was taking her to rehab once a week. The storm of complaints ravaged from the day before. She got even crankier and refused to go when I didn't pay her enough attention. Plenty of complaints kept coming out of her mouth before, during, and after rehab. I was on the verge of a mental breakdown listening to her negativity all the time. I felt as if I was trapped in a cage. Jeremy and I repeatedly asked her if we could hire a helper. The answer was always negative. Don't you feel ashamed to ask a stranger to take care of your family member? She made it sound as if we were the wrongdoer. I continued to work like a servant in obedience to her. 5 years had passed since she moved in with us, and she suddenly changed her attitude. I've decided to hire a helper for myself. Just make sure you pay for it. Jeremy and I wondered what had gotten into her head for changing 180 degrees. Regardless, I was overjoyed to be freed from the burden at last. I suddenly felt motivated to make arrangements for her. She did all the work, and everything was decided in no time. She arranged to have the expenses deducted monthly from her account, and I transferred the necessary amount there every month. It cost money, but she had long-term care insurance that covered half. If I worked full-time like before, I could manage to pay the bills. The helper came on weekdays, so we had never met her. My burden was considerably reduced both physically and mentally, and I felt more relaxed. Working outside also relieved my stress. The helper also took her to rehab, which was the hardest part of my life. She was like a lifesaver to me. I only had to transfer money to Karen's account every month, and that was it. 10 years had passed since she became bedridden, and a question arose in my mind. After a few years of hiring a helper, I had never once seen her. I didn't even know which agency she came from. I had my doubts about whether the money was really being passed on to the helper. When I spoke to Jeremy about it, he vehemently agreed. I had been transferring expenses every month, but I had never checked to see if they had been debited. He asked Karen to show her bank activities, but she stubbornly refused, saying that it was a private matter. You are trying to steal money from me. She turned away from him, and he could not find out. We couldn't even contact the helper as we never got the details. When our suspicions grew stronger, Jeremy suggested something. Let's set these up to see if the helper is really here. He bought small cameras on his way home from work. After making sure Karen was asleep that night, we set them up in various places around the house. When we checked the recordings, our jaws dropped to the floor. A short time after we left for work, she got up from the bed like nothing was wrong with her. After stretching and moving her neck and shoulders to relieve stiffness, she walked out of her room without a care in the world. When she returned a little later, she had an ice cream in her hand. We were speechless at the sight of her sitting on the bed and eating it. She walked around the house and took a shower by herself. After that, she changed her clothes and put on makeup, and then there was a sound of the front door opening. She must have gone out. When she returned 30 minutes later, she was carrying a bag in both hands. Inside were a large number of snacks. We were amused to see her hide them in the back of the closet so that we didn't find them. It seems that when we were not around during the day, she acted like a normal person, and when we came home, she instantly went into acting like a cripple. What the hell is going on? What is this? We murmured at the same time. Karen had completely healed. She had not been taking her rehabilitation seriously. I wondered how she managed to get better. Seeing her as a normal, healthy person, the anger I had been holding back until now welled up inside me. I couldn't remain silent for sure. I had to question her. Jeremy felt the same way. One evening, we came home on time and carried out the plan together. Karen watched the news every day on TV we bought for her. The news began to play loudly from her room as usual. We took advantage of that moment and operated the TV with the multifunctional remote control. She was surprised at the sudden change of the screen. The real show was about to begin. She was speechless at the image of herself walking leisurely through the house. The plan was to get her to talk by showing her all images captured by the cameras. She tried to turn off the TV with her remote control, but I quickly turned it back on with mine. We kept switching on and off for a while until she finally became impatient and glared at me. You, give me that right now. Why don't you just come and get it yourself? You can walk, right? I turned on the TV again and showed her the image. They were high-performance cameras that also recorded the sound of her cheerful humming perfectly. All of her daily activities were recorded on those. She stubbornly continued to turn it off, but when Jeremy snatched the remote from her hand, she was finally unable to resist. If you don't want to watch it so badly, why don't you just walk over to the TV yourself and turn it off at the base? His glare was harsh. She turned pale and tried to read our faces, and then she slowly stood up. She walked with a limp, but it was too deliberate after all that. As I stared at her coldly, she turned off the main power of the TV. The room became quiet. She seemed to be racking her brain trying to come up with some excuse. When she couldn't think of anything, she slowly sat down on the bed and began frantically apologizing. "I'm sorry. I am so sorry." It was the first time I had ever heard her apologize. After that, she mumbled some kind of excuse. When Jeremy demanded that she explain clearly at once, she nervously began to tell us how she got better. When she started rehabilitation, her legs were already strong enough to walk. She recovered incredibly well after a few sessions and was able to walk normally within a week. Once she recovered, she needed to go back to living alone. If she pretended to be crippled, she was able to live with us. She thought it would have been an easier life for her and decided to keep acting the part. She refused rehabilitation so that she could imprint herself as a quirky person and reduced the number of trips to the hospital after she was discharged. I let out a deep sigh at how shallow and selfish she was. She told us that she just wanted to live an easy life. In the beginning, she enjoyed feeling superior by using me as a servant. When she began to feel annoyed with my earnest attempts to care for her, she lied about hiring a helper. She took money from us for her entertainment. Most of it was spent on social games such as lab simulations and music games. The amount I was transferring to her was not enough, and she was even taking it out from her pension. She told the doctor that she was able to walk again thanks to the training, and stopped rehabilitation a few days after she told us she wanted to hire a helper. We took care of all her living expenses, so she had no worries about spending her own money. She spent 10 years of her life using me as her servant without a care in the world. We could never forgive her. "Get out of here as soon as possible." I nodded in agreement. "You can walk and even take a shower by yourself. You can even go shopping alone. You don't need nursing care at all. You don't need to live with us." Karen looked up and instantly burst into tears. "Please let me stay here." Her house had already been torn down and the land sold. She couldn't live alone anymore. She went on and on with selfish excuses. Her shallow scheme of living a financially and physically easy life was so obvious, and yet she kept pleading to rely on us. Our determination was unshakable. "Move out in a week." Jeremy left the room with that. I was about to follow him when she hastily grabbed my arm. "Please, you're on my side, aren't you? It's true that we haven't gotten along well, but isn't it a normal thing between in-laws? We can get along with each other from now on. I'll help you with anything at home." She didn't realize that the reason we didn't get along and I had a hard time were all because of her. I shook off her hand and said quietly, "Like you said before, you don't want to be taken care of by a stranger. I am your daughter-in-law, but you're like a stranger to me. Can you please stop referring me like I'm family only when it suits you?" She slowly crumbled down to the floor. I walked away without looking back. After that, she didn't make any effort to move out. Jeremy got impatient and started packing for her. The sight of him stuffing her personal belongings into boxes was frightful, and she was unable to protest. She had rented a small apartment in a hurry, but she was going to have a hard time living on her pension alone. Even the money from selling the land was spent on stupid games, and she didn't have much left. She could no longer rely on us and asked for help from her friends and relatives. We had shown the recordings to all kinds of people, so no one was likely to give her helping hands. Everyone was furious to find out that she pretended to be physically disabled for 10 years. They refused to get involved with her in any way. Jeremy demanded she pays back the 10 years of living expenses and the money that was supposed to be paid for a helper. She cried and tried to default, saying she didn't have that kind of money, but when we threatened to take her to court, she shut up. She's now cleaning offices in the morning and working at a factory during the day to make ends meet. She pretended to be disabled for a long time and stole our time and money as much as she wanted. I'm sure she's suffering from the painful repercussions. What a pathetic end for a woman who married for money and tried to live comfortably by deceiving her son and his wife. We have been able to get back to our peaceful lives for the first time in 10 years. Even if Karen truly needs care in the future, we would not reach out to her. Well, if she's that tough, I'm sure she will live a long and healthy life.
The result of my husband and his mother, who bullied me, eating a cake that was tempered by themselves.
I'm sorry, help me. This is too much. I apologize. Please do something. As my mother-in-law and husband desperately begged me for help, I asked the first thing that popped into my mind. Why are you guys asking me for help? What have I done to you? I have no idea what's going on with you two and how I can help. Anyway, I have something else to do. I turned my back on them, ignoring the frantic begging in agony behind me, and left. I am Eileen. I was a 27-year-old secretary, and my husband Aaron was 29 years old back then. He was an advertising agent and worked for a different company from me. We met because our offices are in the same building and got married 2 years later. My in-laws lived a short flight away. My mother-in-law Yvonne was left alone after her husband passed away last year. Aaron, being the eldest son, took her in without any discussion. Although we still lived separately, we were just on different floors in the same apartment building. She was, to put it nicely, sassy and a bit impatient, and I was more of a think before act type. We were polar opposite in terms of personality and did not get along well. She seems to get frustrated with my slow speech and action every time. She thought it was better to do things quickly, even if the result was 60 points. She often suffered a loss as a result of proceeding without thinking things through. No matter how hard I tried to adjust to her way, I could not agree with her completely. For example, my wedding. When it came to choosing a venue, "Just pick one already," she scolded me and then recommended a cheap place that was available for the earliest booking without checking the service carefully. At that time, I had narrowed down my choices to a few and was planning to visit each place. "What are you procrastinating about? In the end, all venues are more or less the same. Stop wasting your time worrying about tiny details." Considering our future relationship, I decided to follow her advice. However, the venue was located in a hard-to-reach area, and there was a patchy cellular connection. In addition, we were served a lower-grade course because they weren't able to get the originally planned ingredients on the day. Aaron and I were frowned upon by the guests. Yvonne told the relatives who had complained to her. "Eileen insisted on having a reception here. We tried to reason with her, but she didn't budge." Thanks to her, I was recognized by her relatives as a bride who was not only selfish, but also unable to offer the least hospitality. I complained to Aaron about that. "We were all family now. You should forgive her. Besides, you agreed to have it there in the end." He took her side, and I was left frustrated. Those misunderstandings continued to happen over and over again after the wedding. You are really slow and clumsy. It's a waste of time for me to be with you. You make me wait all the time, and I'm really tired of it. Can't you respect other people's time? She started to criticize me blatantly. That happened because she changed the plan earlier due to her impatience, and I was just on time. I'm sorry, but I just followed the original schedule. Are you telling me it's my fault? Can't you be more flexible? I'm not saying it's your fault, but I have other plans too. Surely you are not that selfish to think that everyone else should accommodate you. Who do you think you are talking to? Don't you dare talk back to me. I knew that Aaron wasn't going to deal with her, so I stopped being nice and directly addressed her. She probably never dreamed of being talked back by me. She became so furious that you could boil water on her head. She told Aaron about that in a very exaggerated manner, and I was yelled at by him later. Why are you so selfish? Stop irritating my mother. He became completely on her side after that. At that time, my father-in-law was still alive and gave her a slap on her wrist. If you can't be nice to your daughter-in-law, it's only a matter of time before this house will cease to exist. When that happens, who will take the responsibility? You have always pushed other people around and caused nothing but trouble. I've been the one to clean up your mess every time. You forget that, and you're being a nuisance to others again? And he gave Aaron a lesson as well. How long are you going to be controlled by your mother? You have your own family now. When your wife is in trouble, you don't even take her side, but tell her off. Shame on you. Thanks to his reproach that their behavior, which could have been seen as bullying, was kept under control. Aaron was actually a really good husband as long as Yvonne wasn't involved. He always prepared a surprise gift for me on my birthday and took the initiative to help me with the housework on his days off. His attitude changed drastically when she was and wasn't around. At that time, we had no significant relationship, and I only saw them during Easter and Christmas. I thought that if I endured those events, I could have a relatively happy married life. However, just 1 year into our marriage, my father-in-law became ill and was hospitalized. He passed away despite his treatment. I wondered what Yvonne was going to do. My mom is moving downstairs next month, and we are going to take care of her, Aaron suddenly announced. What? What do you mean we are going to take care of her? Why didn't you tell me anything about this? I'm the eldest son, of course. I should take care of her now that she's all alone. And since you don't like her, I rented a separate apartment instead of having her move in with us. I'm making a compromise for you, so don't complain. When my father-in-law passed away, I thought we might have needed to take care of her. I never imagined that I was going to be forced to do so without any consultation. I became distrustful of him because of his insensitive behavior. I was also concerned about my future life with him, who would have most likely taken her side if we had a confrontation. I began to a bit cautious in my daily life. Such days were exhausting, and as I feared, Yvonne harassed me in various ways. Moreover, Aaron even suggested that I clean not only our house but hers on my days off. I always help you with the chores. She is getting old and tired, so go and help her. I mean, I can do it too, but she's going to be around for a long time. It's a good opportunity to patch up your relationship with her. I decided to take up his advice in the hope that things would improve. It must be hard for you to do all the house things. I was wondering if there was anything I could do to help. I don't know what a clumsy girl like you can do for me. Well, that's okay. I don't have enough furniture, so could you get me some? Sure. Should I pay first and can you reimburse me later? You live on Aaron's income, don't you? Why don't you pay from there? He said I was free to spend it however I wanted. When I was about to refuse, she lashed out loudly. Just go! I will let him know later. I didn't have the energy to talk back and readied myself to go shopping as she ordered. Then I realized that the things she asked me to buy were large shelves and a coffee table, all of which were difficult to carry by myself. I'm sorry, but these are all big and heavy things. I'd rather wait and go with Aaron. Are you serious? He works so hard. Are you going to make him work even more on his day off? Do you even care about him? If I talked back to her even a little bit, she got upset and yelled at me harshly. I gave up and decided to obey her. Furthermore, Aaron gave her the duplicate key to our house, so she entered without permission while we were at work. She began to open the mail and ransack the bedroom. She may be your mother, but to me she's an outsider. I can't stand it when she comes in and out of our house freely, peeks into our bedroom, and opens our mail without permission. Ask her to stop. He responded with an okay at the moment, but her behavior did not improve. I thought that if things continue as they were, divorce would have been the only option. I felt I was losing my feelings for him. Then, one Friday, Aaron had a day off. I came back from work to find Yvonne relaxing in the living room as if it were her home. Surprisingly, when she noticed me, she made an unusual gesture. Oh, you are back. Hi, Yvonne. I went shopping with Aaron today and found a delicious-looking cake. You have been very kind to me, so I bought it as a thank you and put it in the fridge. I tripped earlier, and it crumbled a little. I'm sorry. I was astounded, and then Aaron joined in. We'll go to a furniture store a bit farther away tomorrow. Mom really wants a bed from there. You're off, so come with us. It's late to have the cake tonight, so let's have it before we go out tomorrow. He was grinning derisively, and I got a hunch that the cake wasn't an honest gift. Okay, why don't we leave after lunch then? Satisfied, the two of them went to clean Yvonne's apartment in preparation for the new bed. I checked the cake in the fridge after they were gone. There was a round chocolate cake that had clearly been tampered with in one place. I could easily have guessed that Yvonne was going to make me eat that questionable part. To cover it up, I ran to a deli and bought a chocolate bar. I melted it down and reapplied it to the top of the cake so that no traces of it could be seen. I moved the strawberry on top a little so that only I could see the questionable part. The next day, Yvonne came over a little earlier than scheduled. Good morning, you're just in time. I just finished preparing the cake, so please have a seat. I tried to fix the crumble part. Oh, of course, I will eat that part, so it may not matter to you. Oh my, that's unusual for you. You got things done ahead of time, and you've even learned to be considerate. Is Aaron up yet? I'm sure he will be up soon. Immediately after, he came to the living room after waking up from sleep. When he got ready to go, the three of us decided to have the cake. He wasn't much of a fan of sweets. Mom, have mine. He handed his plate to her after eating half of his slice. She finished the other half happily. Meanwhile, they both grinned at each other, watching me eat. I knew they had done something to the cake. I thought there was something extremely spicy or bitter in it. The two, who were supposed to be eating the part in question, showed no sign, and I was honestly disappointed. As soon as we finished, well, let's go. Can you drive home? Aaron handed me the car key, and just as we were about to leave, Eileen, you should go to the restroom before we head out. It's quite a long way to the store. I'm fine. Besides, we will use the highway, so it will be quick. Then, when we were getting on the highway, "How much longer until we get there?" asked Aaron with a pale complexion. About an hour and a half, I think. "Can I use the restroom somewhere?" "Eileen, did you really eat the crumbled part?" Following Aaron, Yvonne, who was breaking out in a cold sweat, asked me from the back. "Of course I did. I wouldn't let you or Aaron eat the damaged part." "You don't look so good. Are you feeling okay?" "I need to use the restroom too, so stop anywhere you can." I sensed that both of them were suffering from sudden stomach aches from their appearance. My mischievous spirit got the better of me, and I dared to drive slower and past the first exit. "Come on! I mean, how come you're okay?" "What are you talking about?" Aaron looked like he was trying very hard not to yell at me and asked a bizarre question. "No, it's nothing." "I mean, you guys did something to the cake, didn't you? It's obvious. If you don't tell me honestly, I will skip the next exit." I could see them gasp. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, so you're not going to tell me?" "It's a laxative. We put a laxative in it. I wanted to teach you a little lesson." My hunch was right. I was so glad that I reapplied the chocolate the night before. "Please get off here." I let them out of the car at a gas station we had just arrived at. As soon as they stepped outside, Aaron gasped, "Ugh." I heard him curse in a whisper. Then a faint stench hit my nose, and it was clear to us all that the worst had happened. "You guys are not feeling well, so stay here and rest." "I'm sorry, help me." "This is too much. I apologize. Please do something." "Why are you guys asking me for help? What did I do to you? I have no idea what's going on with you two, and how can I help? Anyway, I have something else to do." Ignoring their frantic pleading and begging, I started the car and rushed home. When I got there, I packed up my belongings and evacuated to my friend's house. I then went to see a lawyer with my journal, which had details of Yvonne and Aaron's bullying, and the data of recorded conversation about the laxatives. Later, I was told that they called the car service to get home. "Damn you! The car service is charging me for dry cleaning because of you. You pay for it." "Why should I? I mean, how did you make such a mess?" I questioned Aaron, who called me in a rage, but he must have felt embarrassed to explain and became silent. "Well, it doesn't matter. I'm divorcing you. Please speak to my lawyer from now on. I'm sure you will get a letter soon." "Wait, why are you talking about divorce?" "Of course! You enjoyed bullying me with your mom. Not only that, you guys even tried to drug me. I can't live with someone like that. More importantly, an adult man who leaked." I couldn't help but burst into laughter. Yvonne, who was apparently listening in on the speaker, screamed, "We don't want a woman like you anyway! Don't ever show your face in front of us again!" Yvonne, I will make sure to bill you for the furniture and other things. Let me make something clear to you. I earn more than Aaron does. I paid for you out of my premarital savings." She was screaming on and on about something, but I ignored her and hung up the phone. A few weeks later, my lawyer told me that Aaron had negotiated to pay alimony in installments, and Yvonne refused to repay me. When my lawyer told her that I could file a police report about the drugging, she agreed to my request. I refused to accept Aaron's installment offer. "You have your father's inheritance, don't you? So please pay me in one lump sum." In the end, he agreed to pay me by giving up most of the inheritance. His income alone was not enough to cover his rent, so he moved to an inexpensive apartment with his unemployed mother. The last time I saw him was at the gas station with a very pale face. I left everything to my lawyer, and our divorce was finalized without needing me to face him again. I accepted a transfer that my work had approached me. I have now started a new life in a new city. My lawyer tells me that she's sometimes contacted by Aaron about getting back together. I have all that handled by her. I am out of my difficult life in which I had no one on my side and was being attacked by two people. I'm enjoying my freedom while I'm busy working hard in a new position. Now that I have received a lot of alimony, I'm thinking of going on a trip once my work is settled.
Lymil called me filthy and gave me newspapers to sleep on. The next day, she lost everything.
When everyone had gone to bed during my stay at my in-laws' house, I was brought into a small, dusty, straight room. "What are we doing here, Susan?" My mother-in-law gave me an evil look. "Don't pretend you don't know. This is where you're sleeping tonight." "Oh, but I'm going to sleep in the guest room with my husband." "There's no bed for a hideous woman." "Hideous?" "Yes, you are. Here, take the newspapers. Sleep on this." Susan took a bundle of old newspapers in a corner of the shed and shoved it to me with a smirk. Why? What did I do to deserve such treatment from her? I felt the back of my nose burning with anger and sadness. I had no choice but to answer in a trembling voice. "Understood." After she left, I tried to get out of there, but it seemed something was propped against the door and it didn't budge. Giving up, I spread a newspaper on the cold, dusty wooden floor and sat down to cry. I couldn't stand it anymore. I would have rather left my husband than be treated like that. Just as I was agonizing, I heard a rattling sound outside, and the door suddenly opened. Standing there was an unexpected person. My name is Joy. I'm 27 years old. I met my husband Jarvis at work and fell for his affectionate and honest personality. After 2 years of dating, we got engaged. Before visiting his family for the first time, he gave me a heads up. "My family has a long lineage in the countryside. My grandma is 80 now and in charge of the house. She's a pretty strict lady. I wonder if she would like me. I'm sure you'll be fine. Besides, my dad and mom are friendly, so don't worry." I was anxious all the way till I get there. His house was located in a vast landscape with acres of green field. It was well maintained and had an affluent appearance. "Hello, we're here," Jarvis called out in the driveway, and his mom came out of the house. I greeted her nervously and handed her a gift. "My goodness, so nice to finally meet you." She was amiable, just as I had heard beforehand. I was ushered into the house with a feeling of some relief. There, I was met by a dignified elderly woman and a gentle-looking man. I knew they were his grandmother and dad. "Oh, welcome. Come, sit down." We sat down in front of the grandmother, as his dad, Dan, suggested. Susan brought glasses of lemonade and joined us. "This is Joy. We're planning to get married this year." When he introduced me to everyone, Dan nodded satisfyingly. "She's wonderful. I'm glad for you, son." In contrast to his cheerful appearance, grandmother just looked at me in silence. Time passed joyfully while I nervously answered questions from his parents. When I sipped the lemonade, I tasted something strange and involuntarily gasped. To put it simply, it was extremely salty. It tasted like seawater, and I couldn't help but gag. "Are you alright?" Dan looked at me with concern. I just laughed it off and told myself that maybe it was a normal flavor in that area. Didn't want to offend the family by saying something strange. Suddenly, Susan changed the conversation. If you guys are getting married, we would like to meet your parents as well. When would be a good time? I only have my mother. Her eyes widened for a moment. One of grandmother's eyebrows seemed to raise as well. My dad passed away in a car accident when I was very young. Since then, my mom raised me by herself. I explained to them what I had told Javis in the past.
Well, you two must have gone through a lot.
Dan gave me a sympathetic smile.
Then, we must make your mother happy. Son, you must take good care of Joy.
Jarvis nodded earnestly. His comments filled me with warmth. When it was time for us to leave, I put on the shoes I left at the entrance. A sharp stabbing pain shot up from my toe. I found a small piece of glass stuck in it. Ouch!
Honey, are you okay?
Jarvis was concerned, and Susan also looked at my foot.
Oh my God! How did it get into your shoe? Are you alright?
No worries, I'm fine. I forced a smile and left the house. On the way home, Jarvis started a conversation.
You must have been nervous all day. Poor you. They were all happy with you, though.
I'm not sure. Your grandma didn't say a word to me.
That means it's all good. She's very direct, so if she didn't like something, she would have said it right then and there.
I hope so. I still felt something strange. The odd salty lemonade and piece of glass in my shoe bothered me. It didn't mean that I could say anything doubtful about his family. I kept my discomfort in my heart. After that, my mom met everyone, and Jarvis and I registered our marriage. My mom cried and rejoiced over it, which assured me that I made the right decision. We had a normal married life for a while after that. Jarvis didn't mind that I kept working, so we had a dual income. One day, a package arrived at our new house from Susan. Inside were some vegetables. I immediately called to thank her. After a few rings, she picked up the phone. Yes, hello? Hi, Susan. Your package arrived today. Thank you.
Oh, good. It's not for you.
I couldn't believe my ears. She snickered into the phone. I sent those for Jarvis. If you eat them, I'll be very mad. She was friendly and kept a smile on her face when she was at the wedding. I was confused by the sarcastic tone compared to that. I can't believe you actually got married, by the way. You knew you weren't welcome, didn't you? What do you mean by that?
I put salt in your drink and even hurt you with the glass. You should have known. You're so stupid.
I had a hunch that those were harassment. I was stunned by the shocking revelation, but she continued to press the point.
I don't welcome a girl raised by a single parent like you in my family. Grandma didn't say a word to you, did she? That's because she didn't accept you. No, she didn't want you to say anything in front of Dan and Jarvis. But it was obvious that she was not happy with you. You should remember that.
Tears welled up in my eyes, and I sniffled into the phone. Hearing that, she continued with satisfaction.
If you tell Jarvis about this call, I'll make sure you regret it. I don't think he will believe you anyway. So, please divorce him as soon as possible.
She hung up the phone. All I could do was stand there in shock. When Jarvis came home, I couldn't tell him what happened. He was delighted to see the package and did not doubt his mother's kindness. There was no way I could tell him the truth. I seldom saw my in-laws who lived far away, so I didn't have to deal with Susan face to face. Instead, she called me frequently, made harsh remarks every time. Also, she made sure to call when Jarvis was not around. She was not pleased with my single-parent upbringing, and eventually, she started making fun of my mom. A woman raised in a low-class, single-parent household isn't good for my son. You were probably living in poverty, weren't you? Your mother is just as bad as you for raising a lowly woman like you. After dealing with her harassment for a while, I was so stressed that I lost weight.
Honey, haven't you lost weight recently?
I rushed to answer Jarvis' question. Oh, really? Maybe it's because I've been on a diet lately. He was worried about me, but I could only brush it off. As the seasons passed, and when summer approached, he asked me,
Hey, why don't we have a short break at my parents' place?
Good idea. I'm looking forward to seeing them again. He was excited to return home after a long while. Not wanting to put a damper on his feelings, I played along with him. In truth, Susan's harassment had not yet ceased. I was fighting a stomach burn that intensified as the trip approached. The day had arrived, and Susan completely hid her usual evil side and welcomed us joyfully. I forced myself to smile and interact with her. When I greeted my grandmother-in-law, Grace, she spoke to me for the first time.
Welcome back, my dear. Make yourself at home.
Thank you. Dan, on the other hand, was as friendly as ever. He welcomed us with freshly picked watermelons and cold drinks. If I stayed close to Jarvis, I wasn't going to be bullied by Susan. I stayed within his sight as much as possible. It was effective. Although she sometimes glared at me secretly, she didn't do anything outwardly terrible. I wanted to finish my trip in peace, but I couldn't ignore helping her clean up after dinner. I had no choice but to be alone with her in the kitchen. As soon as we were away from the others, she threatened me in a low voice.
What on earth do you think you're doing? Sticking to Jarvis all day? I told you to divorce him as soon as possible.
I have no intention of leaving him, I retorted in a slightly stronger tone. If possible, I want you to accept me.
You want me to accept you?
You're so brazen for someone who grew up in a low-class single-parent home.
You even show your face here again. I'm going to teach you a lesson.
Just as I was about to talk back, her expression tightened, looking behind me. I turned around and saw Grace standing in the corridor.
Oh, are you going to bed now? Yes, I am.
Grace stared instantly at me and Susan for a bit, and then slowly disappeared toward her room. Once she was gone, Susan resumed bullying. I had to endure it until I finished cleaning up. When I was done, I returned to the living room. Jarvis was drunk from drinking with Dan.
Hon, I'm going to bed. You should get ready too.
Then Susan immediately spoke up. She said she wanted to look at the old albums, so I'm thinking of showing her. Of course, I never said anything like that, and Jarvis had no reason not to believe her.
Oh, okay. So, can I go first?
Yes, I'll join you later.
As soon as he left, Dan got up, said goodnight, and walked out of the living room. Once we were alone, Susan ordered me to come to the storage room at the back of the house. It was cladded with boxes and old furniture, with a naked light bulb on. It was dim, small, and smelled of dust.
What are we doing here?
Don't pretend you don't know. This is where you're sleeping tonight.
Oh, but I'm going to join Jarvis in the guest room.
She gave me an evil look. There's no bed for a hideous woman.
Hideous?
Yes, you are. Here, take the newspapers. Sleep on this. She took a bundle of old newspapers from a corner and shoved it at me with a smirk.
Why? What did I do to deserve such treatment from her?
I felt the back of my nose burning with anger and sadness. I had no choice but to answer in a trembling voice.
Understood. I'll come and let you out in the early morning. Have a good sleep until then. She left in a good mood without hiding her grin. I tried to get out of there, but it seemed something was propped against the door, and it didn't budge. Giving up, I spread a newspaper on the cold, dusty wooden floor and sat down to cry. After what must have been 2 hours, I heard Susan snoring in the distance. I couldn't sleep at all and sat in the storage room crying. Her bully was becoming more than I could endure. I would have rather left Jarvis than be treated like that. Just as I was agonizing, I heard a rattling sound outside, and the door opened. Grace! There she was, staring down at me with her sharp eyes. What in the world are you doing here? Well, I guess I know. She wiped my tear-stained face with her wrinkled hands. I was pulled up to my feet and led out into the hallway. Then she suddenly shouted loudly, "Get up, all of you, and go to the living room." Jarvis was the first to react to her voice. He looked at my miserable face in tears, and then looked at Grace in surprise. "What's going on, Grandma?" Next, Dan came out to his bedroom. "Mom, what's wrong with you at this time of night? Are you crying, Joy?" Finally, Susan came out looking pale. When everyone gathered in the living room, Grace sat at the head of the table and urged me to sit next to her. Jarvis and Dan looked confused. "Dear, tell us honestly what was done to you today," she spoke in a stern voice. "But don't worry about anything. Just tell us." "Okay." Susan told me that there was no bed for a hideous woman like me. She gave me a bundle of newspapers and locked me in the storage. Jarvis was astonished. "She's been harassing me all this time. She called me a low-class single-parent child. She even made fun of my mother, which was really hurtful." "That's outrageous. You, Susan, what are you thinking?" Dan grimaced at her, but she could only tremble her lips. Grace said to Dan, "It's all true. I found her in the storage. I also heard with my own ears Susan saying terrible things to her in the kitchen after dinner." Dan and Jarvis stared at Susan in shock. Grace glared and yelled at her. "What do you have to say about single mothers? I raised Dan with my own hands alone too. She's a decent girl, you know. How could you do such a terrible thing to her? You are the hideous one." Then Susan took off the mask of a good wife and wise mother she had been wearing and screamed hysterically, "Shut up! Shut up, all of you! It's your fault! You and Jarvis have been flattering her. She's a stupid bitch who grew up in a single-parent home." "Hey!" Dan tried to stop her, but she kept ranting. "Just throw her out of her house right now. I despise her. I am more important to you guys than this woman, right?" Then Grace shouted at her to be quiet, and the room fell silent at once. She turned to Dan. "You see, this is who you've been married to. I've been warning you for a long time, haven't I?" "Mom, she's all about appearances. But what she actually does is spiteful. I have never seen such a malicious woman. I don't intend to share the house with her anymore. If you don't want to get rid of her, you two need to live together." Dan turned to Susan with a red face. "You have always been self-centered, but I never thought you could be this cruel. Now that I know your true nature, I can no longer see you as a wife." "What are you talking about?" "I'll give you some money for the time being. but I want you out of here tomorrow. She couldn't hide her surprise to see him with an unlikely stern attitude. She turned to Jarvis with pleading eyes. Your father is being horrible to me. Say something to him. Give me a break. His normally mild voice had a threatening tone to it, which made her jerk. What did you do to my loving wife? I will never forgive you. I don't want to be in contact with you from now on. Don't ever show your face to me. Oh no! Her knees gave up, and she fell to the floor. Everyone looked at her with disdain, and no one consoled her. Instead, Dan and Jarvis apologized to me repeatedly. I also apologized to them for not telling them about her sooner. And so the night turned into dusk, and Grace and Dan saw us off in the morning. Right before we left, Grace said to me, This is your home too. When you come back next time, she'll be gone, so don't worry. I nodded and gave her a tight hug, then got into the car. I was told that Dan later divorced Susan. He had been fed up with her self-serving and inconsiderate way. They were able to divorce with only the minimum division of property. After being kicked out, Susan was also turned away by her parents, and she was forced to live alone in a smart apartment. She's been a housewife for a long time, but now she has a part-time job. She must be struggling to adjust to the new life. She will probably spend lonely golden years alone, but it's all her fault. I, on the other hand, have been relieved from my stress, and to my surprise, I am pregnant. Since the instant, Jarvis has become even more affectionate to me. Dan and Grace have been very caring as well, so I've been able to enjoy a relaxed pregnancy. I will go back and show Grace her great-grandchild once the baby is born. Right now, I am genuinely looking forward to going there.
After marriage, I've been blamed by my in-laws for not being able to have children. Finally, when a child was born, I was ostracized again because it's a girl. Moreover, my husband doesn't support me at all. Then my husband sent a picture of our child to a group WhatsApp with my in-laws.
She is cute, unlike my wife.
I was so angry at my husband's comments that I decided to expose his secret. Because that child is your mistress's child. My in-laws seem confused, writing, Huh? In the end, things are going to get really difficult for my husband's family. My name is Monica Stone, and I'm 32 years old. I am a hard-working office worker. I'm in the 5th year of marriage with my husband, and we have a 1-month-old daughter named Molly. Our family of 3 live in an apartment. After marriage, we struggled for some time to have a child. It was a source of great distress for us. Finally, during that difficult period, I gave birth to a daughter. That's why I find Molly, whom I gave birth to with great pain, irresistibly adorable. However, it seems that both my in-laws and my husband are dissatisfied with me for giving birth to Molly. My husband, Hank, was a classmate of mine from high school. In high school, he was a refreshingly good-looking guy, cheerful and sociable, popular with both boys and girls alike. He was so popular that girls even formed a fan club for him. Although I didn't join the fan club, I secretly admired Hank as well, thinking he was cool. However, I was quite shy back then, so I never approached Hank, and we weren't particularly close during our school days. I met Hank again at a reunion, and we quickly became friends. My friend Sarah was the bridge between us. Sarah was also a classmate from high school, and she was very beautiful. She had a slim figure like a model, and her facial features were like those of a doll. Sarah married a doctor at the age of 23 and lived a luxurious life. When I asked her why she introduced me to Hank, she replied,
Because you seemed to get along well.
And that was that.
Isn't Hank kind and handsome? But it seems like he's not dating anyone. It seems like there are many women who are only interested in his looks, and he's having a hard time. Since it's a good opportunity, I thought I'd try to set you up with him, Monica. You used to like Hank back in the day, right? Well, I guess you could say that I liked him, but why me? Sarah, you have many beautiful friends, so wouldn't it have been better to introduce him to one of them? Then she spoke more firmly. Because you're my best friend, Monica, that's why. I think you and Hank are a perfect match. Both of you are kind and caring. I think you two could be a great couple. Being praised like that by Sarah made me feel a little embarrassed. What surprised me even more was that Hank had also been aware of me.
I've always liked you, Monica, because you're so modest. I was too embarrassed to confess at that time.
Saying that, he started to approach me more actively. As Sarah said, he looks good, and he seems like he would be kind as a partner. Gradually, I found myself more and more drawn to him. Our relationship progressed smoothly, and before we knew it, we were getting married. I was truly happy. However, I had some concerns about my marriage to Hank. He is the eldest son of a traditional dyer, and he is expected to take over his family's business. In the early days of our marriage, we lived separately in an apartment near his family's home, but it was decided that eventually we would live with them. To gradually adapt to his family's customs, we had to attend family meals every weekend. At first, my in-laws were kind and considerate to me. My mother-in-law, for example, even said, "I'm so glad I have a daughter." However, later on, I've come to realize that these statements were just flattery. At first, there were no issues, but gradually around the 3rd year of our marriage, my in-laws started asking,
"When will you have children? Are we still not going to see the face of our grandchild? Neither I nor my wife are getting any younger. It would be troubling if we were gone and then a grandchild was born."
In response to my father-in-law's sigh-filled words, my mother-in-law also expresses agreement.
"Your father is right. Hank is the eldest son, so you have to have children. When are you going to get pregnant? You need to have children as soon as possible. An older birth is a disgraceful thing."
They constantly blame me for not being able to have children. It's as if they're implying it's my fault for not being able to conceive. I was fed up with being blamed during our weekly meals together. Even if I'm blamed for it, children are a gift, so there's nothing we can do about it, right? Even when I appealed to Hank, expressing my desire to distance ourselves from his parents, he sided with them.
"You're the wife, so you should just go along with my parents. I married you because you seemed quiet, so don't complain. Isn't it natural for my dad and mom to want grandchildren?"
In this way, he ends up scolding me instead. This is something I found out after we got married, but Hank seems to think of me as little more than a housekeeper who will do whatever he wants. Even though we both work, all housework is left to me. Even when I ask for help, he turns a deaf ear and insists that housework is the wife's job. Moreover, he frequently goes out to drink with friends or on trips, enjoying himself while I stay home. I regretted marrying Hank because it wasn't supposed to be like this. Up until we got married, I didn't realize he was so selfish. And even after that, I struggled, but it wasn't until our 3rd year of marriage that I finally got pregnant. With this, I felt relieved to be freed from my in-laws, have a grandchild calls. Hank and my in-laws were also overjoyed about this. At that time, my company was so busy that I often didn't get home until midnight. On top of that, I did all the housework after returning home and hosted dinners at my in-laws' house on weekends. I did almost all the preparations for the dinners. I might have pushed myself too hard, even though I wasn't in a stable condition yet. I collapsed at work, and as a result, I lost the baby. Despite me being the one who was the most upset and depressed, my in-laws directed their anger towards me.
"Honestly, how can you take care of our heir like this? Collapsing over something so trivial and causing trouble, you're truly a useless wife."
My mother-in-law berates me while my father-in-law makes snide remarks.
"I must have made a mistake in choosing a bride. To think she couldn't even bear children properly.
It's been quite a scolding. Who do they think is to blame for my collapse in the first place? Even though it was my in-laws who exploited me during the pregnancy, surprisingly, I wasn't blamed by Hank. Even though he's usually cold, for some reason he comforted me at that time.
It couldn't be helped this time. Luck just wasn't on our side. Let's try again, because it might work this time.
On this rare occasion, when he spoke kindly, I felt like crying. Sweetie, thank you. Relieved, the following year I was able to conceive again. Perhaps the difficulty in conceiving was indeed due to overwork and stress. For the second time, I took good care of my body and avoided pushing myself too hard. As soon as I started maternity leave, I returned to my parents' home, and there I finally gave birth to my daughter. Being able to give birth to our long-awaited child filled me with deep happiness. However, when Hank and my mother-in-law came to visit me at the maternity hospital, they began to say something unsettling.
Doesn't she look nothing like me? Is she really my child?
I was shocked by my husband's words. What are you saying? Of course she's your child, isn't it obvious?
Well, she's not that cute, you know. I mean, I don't have such a wrinkled face. Even though she's a girl, she looks like a wrinkled monkey, doesn't she?
She's just born, so it's natural for her to be wrinkled. Besides, you used to have a face like a little monkey when you were a kid. Instead of reflecting on my words, Hank reacted with irritation.
What's your problem? You don't need to get so angry. You're such a narrow-minded woman.
With that retort, Hank stormed out of the hospital room. I hoped my mother-in-law, who remained behind, would say something to ease the tension, but she wasn't that kind of person.
A girl, huh? What a disappointment. She's just going to get married and leave it eventually, so she's useless. Just a money pit. I want you to have a boy next time who can be our heir.
With those words, my mother-in-law stormed out of the hospital room. I felt like something inside me snapped. I thought I was hopeless. After returning home and explaining the situation to my parents, they were furious at my in-laws. It may have been inappropriate, but I was happy that my parents were angry on my behalf. It felt even worse not being able to tell the truth to my parents, who had been happy about my marriage. My parents told me,
"Stay at home until you feel better."
And they even suggested that I should consider leaving Hank. While I was at my parents' house, I received multiple calls from Hank and my in-laws. However, what they had to say was not reassuring. Hank demanded chores like,
"The room is dirty. Come back soon and make dinner."
While my in-laws arrogantly ordered me around, saying,
"Being pregnant is no excuse to rest."
And,
"If you're a wife, help with our family business."
I was fed up with my selfish in-laws, who didn't even care about my well-being. Why had I endured this for 5 years from people like them? Around 3 weeks after giving birth, I decided to leave. I packed my things, asked my mother to take care of my daughter, and returned home with my father. I had been wondering what to do when meeting up with Hank, but fortunately, he was busy. When I returned home, I thought I should quickly finish my tasks to avoid any trouble. However, upon entering the room, something felt off. There was a scent of woman's perfume in the air. And it was a fragrance I had smelled somewhere before. I thought it might be my mother-in-law, but she didn't usually wear perfume. I had heard stories of husbands cheating on their wives during pregnancy. Feeling uneasy, I asked my father to pack up and began examining my husband's computer. I had a hunch about the password. I had seen Hank enter the password on his computer while cleaning before. The password he used was his car's license plate number. I immediately opened the computer and searched its contents, but nothing suspicious came up. I checked the history, but there was nothing strange. I wondered, am I overthinking? Then I suddenly found a folder labeled S-Guy. My woman's intuition kicked in, and I intuitively thought, there's a secret in this folder. As I checked the folder, I was shocked for a while. After being stunned for a while, I became hot with anger. After packing all the data onto a USB, I finished packing with my father and quietly left the room. A week later, a photo was sent to the group "What's Up" with my in-laws. It was a picture of a baby drooling and sleeping peacefully.
"She looks so beautiful sleeping." She's cute, not resembling Monica at all.
My in-laws immediately commented on Hank's post.
She really seems to be sleeping comfortably. I feel like she resembles you, Hank.
My father-in-law commented in a relaxed, easygoing manner. Then my mother-in-law followed. Suddenly the baby seems to have grown a lot, hasn't she? Monica, are you feeding her too much? You can't give a baby too much milk. Even at a time like this, when they speak ill of me, it somehow intrigues me. I was on the verge of bursting into laughter at my in-laws' rare comments. Why do they feel so carefree to express such odd opinions about this photo? No matter how you look at it, the baby in this picture seems to be about 3 months old. Meanwhile, my daughter is still only 1 month old. No matter how much milk she drinks, she wouldn't suddenly grow so much. I immediately sent a message to the group WhatsApp. You're sending the wrong picture.
Huh? Monica?
Hank, sending a message in his agitation, seemed surprised that I was checking WhatsApp. Meanwhile, my in-laws appeared puzzled, asking, Wrong? Before Hank could come up with any excuses, I decided to reveal the truth. That baby couldn't possibly resemble me, right? After all, that child is the offspring of his affair. After my message, there was silence for a while. Nobody replied. A few minutes later, my in-laws sent confused messages like, Affair? What's going on? In response, someone hastily began making excuses.
No, I mistook it for a picture of a friend's child. Monica, don't say weird things. There's no way I have a lover.
Ignoring his desperate attempts to justify himself, I sent another message. I know everything, so there's no need to deceive me. I'm divorcing you. Let's settle alimony and child support through lawyers. Without waiting for a response, after sending the messages, I left the group WhatsApp. While preparing for a divorce at my parents' house, my in-laws and Hank came over. Hank looked pale and my in-laws wore stern expressions. Then he started pleading.
Hey, what are you suddenly talking about divorce for? I'm telling you that picture is a misunderstanding. Think it over.
After he called me and started lying, I was astonished. If he's going to be like that, then I'll do everything thoroughly for my end too. I went back home once and brought something with me. They were pieces of evidence of Hank's infidelity exchanged on his computer. There were snapshots with other women, emails planning cheating trips, and lovey-dovey WhatsApp exchanges with his mistress. As I showed them, the expressions of my in-laws worsened even more. But most of all, the identity of his affair partner was the problem. By the way, honey, how does it feel that you and Sarah have been cheating on me since before we were married? Hank's affair partner turned out to be none other than the classmate of mine who introduced him to me. She was originally dating Hank, but when she was proposed to by a doctor, she switched to him for money. However, even after becoming married, Sarah continued her relationship with Hank. She deliberately recommended him to me so she could continue playing with him while living a lavish life. According to their WhatsApp messages, Sarah also has a child who seems to be Hank's. That was the true identity of the baby Hank posted on WhatsApp. With no way out, Hank, being blamed by my in-laws, was facing accusations like,
What are you doing?
And,
Cheating?
In his desperation, he looked at me as if seeking salvation.
Monica, please forgive me. I wasn't serious about Sarah. It was just a fling between us. If you wish, I'll never meet Sarah again. So please don't talk about divorce.
I looked at him with cold eyes as he desperately spoke. Did he really think I would reconsider divorce because of those words? Of course, I rejected Hank's pleas. No way. It's been tough since I married you. You don't help with household chores, and you always side with your parents. And to top it off, cheating? There's no way I can stay married to a man like you.
That's true, but...
No excuses. Putting up a picture of your affair partner's child on WhatsApp is just outrageous. I can manage just fine as a single mother since I also earn a decent income. Never come near me and my daughter again. After saying that, I kicked both of my in-laws out of the house. Afterward, I filed for divorce and demanded alimony and child support from Hank. Furthermore, I reported the affair to Sarah's husband.
As a result of her husband requesting a DNA test, it was confirmed that the child was not Hank's, but indeed her own. She had lied to Hank to keep him tied to her. Upon discovering the infidelity, Sarah was divorced and kicked out of the house. It seems that Sarah's husband will be awarded custody of the child. Although my in-laws ran a dying business, the poor quality of work ultimately led to bankruptcy. Already on the brink with debts, Hank's affair was the final blow. Eventually, they had to sell off the house and land, and after paying compensation to me and Sarah's husband, there was reportedly nothing left. Hank now works in a labor-intensive factory, while his parents make ends meet with casual labor and part-time jobs. The monthly child support is paid from Hank's salary. I, on the other hand, am doing my best as a single mother while watching my daughter grow up at home. My parents also love my daughter dearly, and we enjoy peaceful and happy days. I want to protect this happiness forever.